When the camera is turned off, the world that millions of people have been watching, the lives of the stars, turns into an inexpressible dark mystery. Everything seemed perfect in front of the public, but there was something deeper and more emotional than loyal fans could imagine. Jungkook, the magnate who is always cheerful and full of spirit, suddenly makes a confession that breaks his fans' hearts. An incident that occurred when the cameras were turned off, and an apology that came full of tears and a sense of regret, became a turning point that shook the world. What is going on behind the scenes that has been hidden? What caused Jungkook, the idol who never looked weak, to feel such deep pressure? All those questions boil down to one point: a shocking incident that changed his life and the relationship with the fans. It all started on what seemed like a normal day for Jungkook. Out there, he seemed like an unshakable figure, a successful young man, respected by many, and having the support of countless fans. However, by the time the camera died, this entire world that had been so carefully constructed was destroyed in an instant. Jungkook always looks perfect, with a smile that never fades and a friendly attitude. He is a figure who is often regarded as a protector for his fans, ARMY. No one could have thought that behind her cheerful smile, there was a growing sense of anxiety, sadness, and pressure. All we see is a thick screen protecting him from a reality he can no longer hide. One dark night, after filming a big show, Jungkook enters the dressing room. There was no one around, only the sound of footsteps breaking the silence. It was there, in a space inaccessible to the camera, that Jungkook released the weight he had been holding onto. What looks on the outside is a successful young man. However, behind him, there was a sense of dissatisfaction that haunted him at all times. When he realized that the camera had been turned off, tears began to flow. The heartfelt apology was not just for ARMY, not just for his family, but for himself, an acknowledgement of the immense pressure he faced in silence. What happens when the camera is turned off is a very personal moment for Jungkook, and no one could broadcast it, except the words that finally came out of his mouth. This incident shook the world, not because of a far-fetched drama, but because of a confession that came very sincerely. Jungkook, who was known for always being strong in front of his fans, revealed that he feels overwhelmed by the high expectations that are required of him, both as an idol and as a human being. When he expressed these feelings, the hearts of the fans seemed to be scattered. No one would have thought that behind all these incredible achievements, there are so many invisible sacrifices. "I'm sorry," Jungkook said in a choked voice. "I feel like I have let you guys down, even though I tried so hard to be the best. I know I'm not perfect, and I'm still learning to get better, but sometimes I feel like I'm not good enough, not strong enough to deal with it." These words came like lightning strikes, transforming the atmosphere that had previously been full of cheers into a deep silence. The fans, who have loved and supported Jungkook throughout his career, were speechless, not knowing how to respond. However, amid the shock and confusion, there is an even deeper recognition that Jungkook is not just a figure on stage, but also a human being with all his vulnerabilities. What caused Jungkook to feel this way? What caused this person who always seemed optimistic and full of enthusiasm to feel so excluded? As it turned out, the pressure Jungkook felt came not only from the harsh world of entertainment, but also from such high expectations from fans, agencies, and himself. Over the years, Jungkook has strived to give his best at every opportunity. He felt that his every step should be perfect, his every appearance should be impressive. However, the more he strives to meet these expectations, the more he feels like he is missing out on himself. When the cameras are turned off and the world goes silent again, Jungkook begins to feel feelings that words cannot express. All the happiness he showed all this time was only part of a mask he wore to cover deep wounds. That night, in a dark and lonely room, Jungkook begins to question himself. Am I good enough? Ask yourself in your heart. Have I met their expectations? Or am I just disappointing them? When Jungkook finally apologized, he did so with regret. Even more heartwarming, however, was the fact that the apology was not just for himself, but for everyone he loved. He wants to show that even though he is an idol, he is also a human being who cannot be separated from mistakes and weaknesses. Jungkook's apology was heartbreaking, not because he felt guilty for certain actions, but because he realized that he couldn't always live up to everyone's expectations. He is a person who has tried his hardest to be perfect, but he begins to understand that in the process, he may have lost himself. When she cries, it is not only the physical pain she feels, but also the mental burden that is so great, weighed down by the high expectations of everyone around her. The reaction of the fans was very mixed. Some were shocked and didn't know how to react, while others were deeply concerned about Jungkook and his condition. Some did not accept the pressure they had to face, while others instead showed a deeper affection for the meaning. However, amid all the mixed feelings, one thing is clear: Jungkook is never alone. The army, which had been a part of his life for many years, was always there to support him. They realized that behind every smile he put on stage, there was a struggle he had to face, and they promised to continue to support him, no matter what. "Jungkook, you don't have to apologize," one fan wrote on social media. "We love you for who you are, no matter what happens. You don't have to be perfect for us, because you are already perfect with all your uniqueness." Jungkook's apology was not only a confession, but also a turning point. It was a moment that made him realize that he did not have to meet every expectation of others to be happy. He begins to accept that he has the right to feel fatigue, confusion, and sadness without having to fear rejection. For fans, this incident brought mixed feelings. There is concern, but also a growing sense of deep affection. Jungkook, who had seemed unshakable all along, finally showed a more human side, and in the process, he found a new strength, the strength to accept himself. Jungkook's heartbreaking apology became more than just a sentence that came out of his mouth. It was a moment that revealed so much about her, about fear, about doubt, about a burden invisible to the public. Although the outside world had always regarded him as a cheerful and feisty magne, behind it all, there was a darker feeling that continued to haunt him. No one knows how deep the feeling is buried, except he himself. Since joining BTS, Jungkook has been under a lot of pressure. Not only as an idol who must always look perfect, but also as an individual who wants to stay on the right track. Every decision he made, every word he said, everything seemed to be watched by millions of pairs of eyes waiting to see his every move. However, behind the fame and love he received, there were moments of such heavy loneliness. It was something that could not be expressed in simple words. At that moment, when the cameras were turned off and everyone around Jungkook began to leave, the feeling grew stronger, the sense that he had to hide a lot of things. Maybe he felt he had to show the world that he could deal with it on his own, that he could deal with all that pressure without showing weakness. However, as is often the case with humans, there comes a time when everything feels so burdensome, so unbearable. It was a point where Jungkook could no longer hide behind the smile he displayed on stage. Her tears that fell at that time were not only because of the physical pain she felt after hours of work, but also because of the anxiety and fear that continued to eat away at her. A sense that although he strives to meet everyone's expectations, he often feels inadequate. As it turned out, even though he seemed strong, in his heart, there was a fear of failure, a fear that one day he would disappoint the people who relied on him so much. Jungkook has spent so much time and energy to make his fans proud. He knows that they expect to see him succeed, see him happy, and see him always look perfect. However, over time, he begins to feel that he is missing something more important than external appearance. He begins to lose himself. It was something that bothered him a lot. No one knows how lonely and isolated he sometimes feels, despite being surrounded by so many people. When he finally apologizes with regret, it is not just because of a certain incident or action. It was a recognition of a feeling that had been deeply buried, a feeling that he now felt he could no longer bear alone. With great sadness, he admitted that he had suppressed his feelings for too long in order to maintain the image he had built in front of the public. However, in the end, he realized that he could not constantly live in the shadow of other people's expectations. He has to make room for himself. The words he spoke that night, "I'm sorry, I don't feel good enough," moved his fans. Not because they feel disappointed, but because they realize that behind every smile and cheerful look, there is a burden to be borne by an ordinary human being. It was a moment that made the world aware that their idol was not a perfect being, but someone who also had feelings, doubts, and flaws. And it is precisely behind that vulnerability that they love him even more. The fans who had been idolizing Jungkook sincerely felt an openness and honesty that they could not expect before. They knew that Jungkook had fought his hardest, and perhaps that was why he felt so tired and depressed. However, They also realized that in that apology, there was such sincerity. They never asked for perfection from him. All they wanted was Jungkook to be honest with himself. And for the first time, Jungkook showed such a human side of himself. However, there is something more to it than just that apology. There was a realization that even though he had made a very emotional confession, Jungkook's journey would never be the same again. The events of that night were not only an incident that took place behind the scenes, but also a turning point in his life. It was the moment when he began to learn to accept himself with all his advantages and disadvantages. While the world regards him as an unstoppable figure, Jungkook is now beginning to realize that he doesn't need to be perfect to be loved. The love that his fans give him is not one that is based on the image he builds in front of the cameras, but on him as an individual full of sincerity and fragility. This brought about a great change for him. He begins to feel freer, lighter, because he no longer has to hide from his true feelings. That Jungkook's courage to express those feelings opened the eyes of many people. That behind the glitter of the entertainment world, there is a human side that is often forgotten. Not only the fans were touched, but even his bandmates in BTS also expressed their admiration for Jungkook's courage to show his fragile side. No one knows how much of a struggle he has faced so far. And when he finally opens up, it's not just for himself, but also for the people who love him. Jungkook may have apologized, but for his fans, he didn't have to. What he showed was more than words. It was a confession that came from a heart filled with pain, regret, and ultimately, self-understanding. No one is perfect, and that is a reality that must be accepted by all of us, even by a big star like Jungkook. And as soon as that apology came out, the world changed. He is no longer just a figure seen through the stage lights, but a human being like all of us, struggling, feeling anxious, and trying to get better every day. And in the process, we all learn to accept and love ourselves more, just as we love Jungkook. When Jungkook's heartfelt apology was uttered, not only the entertainment world fell silent, but all of his fans also felt a deep emotional tremor. Those who witnessed the moment began to realize that behind the figure, who always appeared full of energy and optimism, there was another, rarely seen side, full of doubts, worries, and fatigue. A very human reality, far from the perfect image that is often built by the media and the entertainment industry. Not only the fans were shocked, but even his colleagues in BTS felt the profound impact of the incident. As they revealed afterwards, they never knew how much of a burden Jungkook was carrying behind his ever-bright smile. This is an important moment, not only for Jungkook, but also for the other BTS members who have been with him all this time. But this is the first time they have seen another side of him that is very personal and full of difficulties. That Jungkook's courage to apologize publicly at the time was not an easy decision. It was a decision to tear down the wall he had built around himself, one that served to preserve his public image as an unwavering idol. In the entertainment world, image is everything, and for someone as widely known as Jungkook, opening up like that can be a big risk. However, he did so, not because he wanted to show weakness, but because he felt that it was the most honest step for himself and for those who had supported him. Behind the dead camera, the atmosphere becomes more intimate. So many things actually happen in the blink of an eye, as the screen lights up and the spotlight of the stage lights fades. The world of entertainment, in all its glory, always looks very shiny, but in fact it is a world full of pressure. How can a person, who is daily under the public spotlight, feel free? How can he solve his personal problems without feeling trapped in endless demands? Those questions hung in the air after the incident, but for Jungkook, it was a time of learning and self-disclosure. The events that take place behind the scenes seem to hint at greater things. Jungkook, though known for his cheerful and energetic nature, is also a man full of doubts and fears. No one can really prepare themselves for the reality of life that does not always go according to plan. Although the world sees him as the perfect person, the reality he faces is a reality full of questions and emptiness that are not easy to answer. Many have asked, what really happened behind the apology? Some say that it is a form of release, a recognition that marks the end of a long journey full of self-emphasis and never-ending expectations. Others felt that it was Jungkook's way of finding himself again, to escape the shadows he had been trying to maintain. However, there were also those who felt that the moment was more than an apology. It was an acknowledgement of a personal struggle that many never knew existed.